And here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. 2:01, we're going to get this started. I am not going to talk much. Stephen here from the Coach and Athlete Development branch in Nordic Canada, as you may well know for those who have seen me on multiple occasions. But today we have a particularly high attendance. Let's hope it keeps climbing through the presentation and over the series as we continue our webinars. This is going to be our final webinar of the initial inaugural series. We'll be joining you back towards mid-end of summer, probably. September, I think, is when we're targeting to get back to regular posting. We have quite a treat for you today. In fact, I consider this being a treat, being on the same screen as some of these big names and some of the major icons in World Cup skiing right now. I hope you're as excited as I am. Today, it's all about owning your project, owning your training, owning your skiing, making it yours. I'm not going to say more than that. What I am hoping is that we can draw some great insights from the athletes who are going to share their stories, as well as looking at how that might look from junior level or even younger, right up to you're achieving your top personal performances. So I will lend this over to Erik, who will be guiding the whole thing. We are recording this session. It will be available on the Nordic Canada YouTube channel in the next day or so after we finish. Hope you enjoy this. You can ask questions today through the Q&A. Type them in. I will make sure that these get passed on through a question period towards the end, I think, Erik. That'll probably be my only cutting in during this session today. As I said, you know I'm going to try and be quiet. I'm already muffing this up. So Erik, I'm handing it over to you already. Please enjoy, everyone. And I will be back with you just to wrap up at the end.
Thank you, Stephen. We have an exciting lineup today. We have a lot of high performing skiers over the last decade and even so. In Devon Kershaw and Sophie Caldwell, North American athletes. And we also have two Norwegians in with Erik Brandsdal and Ragnhild Haga. I guess Devon also is kind of half Norwegian now.
Oof.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're producing Norwegians, that qualifies.
Yeah, that's fair.
Exactly. So we're having, I had the chat with all four of them before going into this one, and we kind of landed on, with direction, which is this ownership piece from the athlete side, and how to kind of take kind of responsible for that from an athlete perspective, but hopefully also triggers maybe some coaches to set that up to be an environment that they can get this from. So that's kind of the direction we're going in. I'm not going to talk too much. I'm going to focus on kind of leading the conversation and asking questions, and let these guys share their wisdom as much as possible within the ish hour we are going to do this for today. So yeah, I'm kind of leading on to you right away, Devon, and maybe you can kind of introduce a little bit of where we're going today.
Yeah, no, I mean, not just to repeat what Erik said, but I think it is a really important discussion, and especially in a North American context. This idea of like being, I mean, it's just so cliche, but really like being a student of your sport, like, and really figuring things out for yourself and what works for you and how you can improve personally as the years go by and you go from junior to senior, instead of just kind of blindly following a coach or sorry all the coaches out there, but I think it is really important to take personal responsibility, personal ownership, like Erik was saying. And the reason why I do believe that to be so important is when you get older and you've been on the World Cup for a long time. The key is, I mean, you have to challenge yourself, and then you'll adapt to those challenges. And then the reality is that things that were really hard when you're like 22, 23, if you just keep doing the same thing and that's all you do, by the time you're 28, 29, 30, you're not going to get the same gains from that sort of training or those sorts of technique work and that sort of thing. And you're going to have to stress your system and adapt to those new challenges and keep improving. And if you're just hoping to follow a recipe, without tasting the food as you're making it, it's really hard to figure out what you actually need to get better. And I can go on for 1,000 years about my experience, but I'll leave that a little to the side in some ways. But one small anecdote is the way Cross Country Canada, what it used to be called, was structured back in my days, back in the 3-pin binding days and the knickers and the whole thing. We just had water belts with trail mix instead of sport drink, but it worked for us. But I had a lot of different coaches in my senior career. I mean, I had 8 different coaches in my senior career, so there's no continuity there whatsoever. And that's just how it landed in my career, personally, and without taking personal ownership in my training. And I mean, I'm so thankful for all the coaches that I was able to work with. And the one major thing that came out of that little bit disjointed period as a senior is I learned a ton about myself. Because if you're getting a new coach every year or every 2 years that's coming in with their philosophy, if you don't really know who you are and you haven't taken the time to kind of like think about and figure out, it's really hard to answer those questions with a new coach when a new coach would come in and say, so what do you want to work on? It's like, if I had no answers for that and just say like, you tell me what I want to work on. He doesn't know or she doesn't know because they've never seen me or worked with me before. So that was kind of forced on me, that education piece, and I really appreciated it actually. And I learned a ton about myself. But I think before we move on to other people and get other people's input, because I think the Norwegian model is really, really interesting. And I think Sophie brings a very interesting model in the sense that she went to like a ski school in the US, but then also went the college route, which is becoming more and more popular in the US. And there is some really great college ski programs in the US now, which is fantastic, because back when I'm an old man. So like 20 years ago, oh my God, what? Not 20, but 18 years ago, not quite 20 years ago, when I could have had that opportunity, it just wasn't set up in the same way. And you didn't have the same expertise leading the college programs in the US as you do now. And why am I going around and around like this? The reason is, I think it's really important to use your junior years and your young senior years think of it as an education almost as an athlete. And not just learning how to be a better skier, but learning what you need or learning what can help you get better. What are those things that can help you get better, and surround yourself with those resources. And as you move through a program, you'll be in a club program most likely. And then maybe you move on to, if you're an American or Canadian, maybe you move on to a university ski team or that sort of thing, and you'll get more input there. And then if you're good enough, you'll be in a national team program. And like I said, in my experience, coaches change, and other programs, they don't change that often, but you can always but you can work with these people throughout all these steps to learn a lot about cross-country skiing. And isn't that the point? And the goal of that should be that when you become an older senior and those adaptations just start to become quick, and you don't get the same gains as that you were hoping to get, that you got when you were 21, 22, you have a base of knowledge that you can draw from and really kind of take ownership of your own training and be an active part of the whole process. And at the end of the day, I mean, I've seen a lot of results lists in my life, and I've never seen a coach's name on the results list ever. I've seen like a position, your name, time back, and then fist points. That's it. So I think it's really important to remember that it's your career for the athletes that are sitting in on this. And if you're just going to sit idly by and say, oh yeah, they'll let me know what I need to do, and then just play Fortnite or hang out and then not take any personal ownership in this journey, I'm sorry, it's going to be very hard to make the elite level. And I define the elite level as like top 10 in the World Cup, let's say. So
great start, Devon. Fantastic. I think that was amazing. Let's lead over to you, Sophie. Devon talked about like pretty big picture here, giving some examples. Can you tell us a little bit about your kind of almost journey towards the independence and confidence in your own product you have right now, from maybe a bit younger, like how is this developed for you, this ownership piece?
Yeah, I think the idea of taking ownership over your own training is really important, and it can be a little daunting at times, but I think it's really important to remember that training and training plans, they don't have to be rocket science. I think the coaches I've worked the best with have a pretty simple view of training, and I like to work with them. You know, they can kind of give me direction, and we have these bigger goals for the year and bigger goals for the week, but they're really giving me a direction, and I can have some input in my training too. And I think what I mean by simple is, in general, I'm following kind of the same template every week, and it's a pretty simple template. You know, I do 2 intensity sessions and 2 strength sessions and a speed session and maybe 2 over distance sessions. And whether it's an easy week or a medium week or a hard week, I'm generally following that and filling in between with some easier workouts and recovery workouts. But I kind of take a step back and look at the week and decide what the most important workouts for me are going to be that week. And I try to focus on quality over quantity. I'm personally not a huge volume trainer. I think last year I trained 765 hours. And I found that if I'm really focusing on one number, a certain volume, I can get tired pretty quickly. And so I think for me, it's really worked to take a step back and rather than focusing on a certain amount of hours, pick out kind of my key workouts for the week. And the focus is on feeling good for those and then filling things in around them. And each week, whether it's an easy week or a volume week or a medium week, is going to have those important workouts. And for me, I've found it following the same template is a good reminder that things can be kept pretty simple. And I think if you're following that, you know, throughout the whole training season, it's also a really nice way to be able to track how you're progressing and make different goals, different focuses for different periods. But I think, yeah, remembering that training isn't rocket science. Like, the goal is always to get fitter and stronger. And I think we can educate ourselves more about training by working with our coaches and remembering that it doesn't have to be this super complicated thing. In general, the weeks look pretty similar. And I think, you know, like Jessie Diggins is on my club team, and even though she's a all-around skier and maybe I'm more of a sprinter, most of the training we do together. And it's not like our coaches are mapping out every single minute of our week. We're trying to learn from each other, you know, take turns leading when we're stronger in a workout. But just because we have slightly different strengths and are slightly different skiers, like, most of all the training we're doing is the same. And I think for me, what's worked really well is keeping it relatively simple.
Fantastic, Sophie. Thank you. It's kind of a natural lead into a little bit where I think you're going to start off, Ragnhild, on like maybe choosing to daring to choose something and like that process of like having some continuity. What's your experience with this kind of development based stuff of what Sophie just said on that?
Yeah, I really agree with Sophie that training shouldn't be so hard. It's quite simple in a way. And in Norway, we often learn a lot about training when we are juniors in our clubs and in like schools. And we have parents in the clubs coaching us, and also a few professional coaches. And most juniors in my club, they write their own training plan, or in some way have quite a lot of idea about what they should do between the trainings with the club. Like, they can go on holiday and put some intervals into the holiday and like do training also during summer on their own. So that's how I grew up in my club. Learning a little more year by year, and then we turn out quite independent. Like in my team right now, we are maybe the challenge is that we are too independent. We are a little bit old, the girls, and of course we're using the coaches, but during like the winter for me, some focus areas show up in my head, like what do I want to improve the next year. And then in spring I write down what is the focus for next year. Will I do more only skating races, or will I focus on strength training? And then that's my goals, and of course I discuss with my coach, and we try to make a plan around it. But I always have the last word in a way if we disagree. So it's my project, and yeah, then it's kind of towards the season, the challenge is to stick to your prioritizations in a way. It's very easy to make a plan, but it's quite hard to maybe stick to doing as much strength training as you had planned, or like do the intervals on a rainy day in the autumn. But then it's like, it's just your responsibility, as Devon said. I had actually a conversation with Hans Christer Holund, another Norwegian skier, 2 years ago, when I was a bit disappointed about my season. And I was blaming myself a bit for it, and also my coach, because I thought maybe he didn't support me enough or give me the right advice during the season. But then Hans Christer, he just said, your coach doesn't get fired. It's only you who gets fired from the team or lose your spot, or it's your job. And of course I knew it was my fault in a way. So as he said, Devon, that you are only responsible yourself for your results. That's also my opinion. So just use the people around you in a good way, and yeah, prioritize in training, and not like, you can't do everything in a year. So you have to choose a few focus areas and stick to them over time.
That's a lot of good advice there. Leading over to you, Eirik. It's been talked a lot about kind of both qualities and how to get there, and kind of having, and the end result of having this ownership. Can you tell us a little bit maybe about your, let's say, junior years, even prior, or transforming from even a juvenile 15, 16-year-old all the way to a senior, and kind of how your training, setup, learning process worked for you?
Of course. When I meet juniors, I usually tell them my story. Can you see me?
Yeah, we're all good.
Okay, yeah. I tell them the story on how I was in my early years of my career until 17 years old. I was just happy-go-lucky, enjoying training, taking part in all kinds of trainings I could, and doing a lot of variety in my training, and didn't take ownership into my training planning, and didn't register how my body worked actually. But then suddenly, when we turned 17, we got a new coach. Up until then, we had one of my best friend's father. He was our coach, or he was leading the group and planning and everything. And we got a professional trainer, coach that started. I remember the first training. He said we were only 4 guys in that training, and he pointed at 2 of us and asked us to, now you get the responsibility to plan the next session. I want sprints, short sprints, and you need to focus on where the sprints are going to be, which loop we are going to warm up, and you have to make sure that this is going to be a good session for everyone. And I remember, like, me and I got the job, and my best friend, and we were looking at each other and just thinking, what kind of stupid thing is this? We're doing his job, and shaking our head. But of course, we did it, and we wanted to give this guy a chance. And this coach changed my career. He taught us how to be able to know how to plan trainings, how to listen to your body. We had after trainings, he taught us about how the body works, and he made us individual coaches, so we could teach ourselves how to get them best out of every session. And from that year, of course, he had to go soft on us the first couple of years, because we were not so motivated, and I personally, I wasn't planning on becoming a cross-country skier. But thanks to this guy, and loving to improve and getting better, I got better every year, and I've stick to his philosophy, and been it's been very, as Devon started with. Of course, when you get better, you get into new teams, and you meet new coaches, and you change coach quite often, and then it's good to know that what works for you, and be able to get the new coach to so we can tell the new coach and make him a good coach with you as well. So I think the connection between an athlete and a coach is based on communication and learning from each other, and the more you know about each other, then the better the coach and the relationship gets. So yeah, and I have one thing that I tell. This popped into my head when Sophie spoke. I think when new athletes get into I've been on the team for the Norwegian cross-country team for 10 years, and I've seen athletes come and go. And in Norway, many athletes struggle the first year, or the first year they get into the national team, because they get a lot of new impressions from, or they get driven by all the athletes, and they get so motivated, and like they're forgetting their why they got there. And so my first thing that I tell athletes coming into the team is you need to remember what brought you here, and be aware of what works for you, and yeah. So that's it's easy to just forget everything and adapt into new routines, and get driven by the pressure and all the yeah, it's the group mentality, and you forget what works for you.
Based off of that, Devon, like you had, well, I'm gonna actually kind of quote you now, but you can kind of keep on going from there. You said to me in the pre-talk we did, you almost looked at the first 2 years on the national team for you. I think this could be transferable to getting into a program as a junior as well. You almost sort of like a 2-year kind of startup phase for you, getting like to know what it was in the first place, anything from like that race level to the group itself and how training works. Of course, you had to go those years, but you kind of you need to think long term. Can you elaborate around what we talked about around there, especially for you?
No, for sure. I mean, for me in my career, like it was, yeah, I really viewed my early years in my career as an apprenticeship, really. I mean, you have to take those years and take the time to learn about yourself, and then learn how I think Eirik made an amazing point there about like the relationship with your coach. And we can get all like fancy and talk about anything, but it's like any sort of working relationship. But for a coach, when you travel around the world with them, or you have such close contact, it's almost like this weird dichotomy of family, and like you just can be so close with your coach, right? And if you don't have good communication, it's really hard to improve both of you guys together. And I think good communication is super, super important. But those kind of skills don't just come overnight. You can't just snap your fingers and a new coach comes in and you're like, oh yeah, we're going to be buds, or we're going to have a good working relationship and be honest with each other. I really felt that those early years in my career were spent like really learning everything I could. And you know what? I was really fortunate in my career. We didn't have a whole lot of funding. So for those Canadians on the call that complain about funding, because it isn't the best right now in Canada, and I appreciate that, and that is true. But we also didn't have great funding from the men's side of things when I was a young senior. And I came into the team and I just kind of got lucky in some senses, because I was surrounded by a bunch of guys that no one was really any better than the other. And I just happened to be the youngest guy in the group. So, and we got to know each other so well, and we became really close friends. Those guys are still like some of my closest friends to this day. And a lot of them retired, like, 10 years before I did, kind of thing. That maybe more says that I pushed it too long than them. But we really learned a lot about each other, and we took a lot of time to ask each other questions, go through the video with each other, talk about technique with each other. Yeah, we got in little tiffs too. Like, I was a little shit with some intervals. I can admit it. Like, I mean, as were other people, like taking a little shorter rest, or a day that you don't have like the best self-confidence or something, like complaining about like the wheels, or like just like making something up, or like, oh, my knee's a little sore today. And like, it's ridiculous. But the best part about in those early years in my career is I would get called out from it. Like, I really would. Like, guys that were like 5-6 years older than me would be like, Devon, stop being an idiot. and they're like, yeah, that's true. And so I really, I didn't just learn that personal development I'm talking about wasn't just with the training or with my body or that sort of thing. It was also like as a person, and how to work well in a team. Because while everyone might have a similar goal or the same goal in some senses, I mean, especially on a national team, right? Like, people want to succeed or improve on the World Cup level or World Championships or whatever. So we all kind of have the same goals. But to really achieve that, and that's where like Norway has done historically a good job, because it's your national sport and you have so much history behind you, and so many smart, like, not just smart, that's a ridiculous term, but you have a deep history that you can draw from. And the US, like Sophie, like, you guys have just created that history yourselves. And I think I kind of had a similar experience in Canada, because we didn't have any real results or anything from the men's side of things, like zero. Like, Pierre Harvey was, like, before I came, like, Pierre Harvey was the only Canadian man with the World Cup podium. Like, I had no idea who Pierre Harvey was, like, no idea. Like, he could have walked right up to me and I would have no idea who he was at that time as a 20-year-old. So it is really, really important to lean on each other. And I use those, like you said, Erik, like when we talked about it is really, it is really important to take those early years and learn, and don't be too hard on yourself, and ask the people around you to improve and get better. So you can know, like I said, later in my career, when you're older and have experience, and you can make good decisions that have some foundation to them.
Exactly. We have some questions coming in here, guys. Sophie, the first one's for you. You make reference to notice your improvement. What waypoints or reference marks did you use to give you a sense of your improvements? And how did those contribute to gaining confidence in what way, and what are you doing? So, well, that was a bit stuttering by me there, trying to read second language spontaneously, but did you get it, Sophie, or do you want me to go again?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Well, I feel like with our club team here, we have certain time trials or tests that we'll do throughout the summer. So those are definitely markers where we can keep track of how we're improving. But you also just get a feel of things. You know, usually when I come in from the spring, I've done very little ski specific training in the spring, because I take that as an opportunity to both take a physical break and mental break. But I'm not usually in very good ski specific strength when I come into the summer. But, and even today, you know, we did some roller ski kind of speed intervals, and one of our coaches asked me how it felt, and I was like, you know, it's feeling better. It's funny, like the more you roller ski, the better roller skiing feels, and the more you do strength, the better skiing feels. And I think if you're smart about it, you're just naturally going to build on your fitness and your strength. And then we do have these markers that we can keep track of throughout the summer. And we're pretty much training in the same area, especially this summer, because we haven't had many camps, but we're doing a lot of the same workouts over and over. And even if it's not a time trial, I think if you're in tune with your body and how you're feeling, you can feel yourself getting stronger and getting fitter. And just having that consistency and keeping things simple and doing a lot of the same workouts over and over makes it easy to kind of track that progression throughout the summer. And then maybe if all of a sudden you're going a lot slower, you feel like a workout is really strained, maybe that's a sign that you've pushed it a little too far and it's time to take some time to recover.
So having some standard sessions almost, that you, even if it's a easy one, sometimes it's a hard one, but you have a standard lap or interval or something, and you have some reference points on, of course, feeling maybe heart rate something, and kind of comparing yourself to yourself frequently. Is that basically what this is?
Yeah, exactly. And even, I try to wear a heart rate monitor for most of my training, and even on the easy workouts, I can tell when I'm tired if my heart rate is pretty high on what's supposed to be an easy run and I need to end up walking or something. But it doesn't have to be a time trial or a test. I think on the easy workouts, whether it's based on your heart rate or just how you're feeling, the goal should be in tune enough with your body that you can sense that.
Ragnhild, we have a question for you. You spoke of not always being in the form you wanted to be or hoping to be. And you need to kind of set some targets, maybe like map out like next year, and you mentioned like working on strength or working on this or that. What kind of training risks have you taken, and how do you limit these risks? So I guess you get the question.
Risks. I think being kind of athlete on this level is a risk in a way of not getting the results you want. So you have to accept that. But of course, maybe in some periods I've been training too much, especially during some autumns. It can be too much and too high intensity, and you start up in November with the races and your legs feel tired, and it's hard to like go back and make things right, because you have to zero maybe your form, and then the season is over before you even start with a good body. So yeah, I think I've been through ups and downs, and that's quite normal for most athletes. But it's important to learn from your mistakes as much as possible, I think, and always like look to the next race and not always back as well.
Eirik, question for you. You talk about the influence of one particular coach. Did you ever struggle with a coach who wanted to control you? Well, it doesn't say, but control you too much is what I'm reading from this. And if so, how did you deal with
that? Sure. When I got to the national team, I had some issues. My way into the national team was I started after high school. I started at the university, and I wanted to continue doing some subjects while I was taking part in the Norwegian national team, and my new coach didn't like that at all, so I had to give up. And I don't know, it's something about the whole picture. Like I'm a person that needs something outside the sport as well. It's been really important for me to have something to make the sport less serious. You know, if I only have the sport to in my everyday life, it gets too serious. So that at least how I feel. I can feel that that will affect me negatively. So my new coach didn't understand that, I think, and that was some troubles. But yeah.
How did you solve it, Erik?
It worked out. What?
Okay, you worked it out. That's the story.
yeah, we worked it out.
That's exactly. No, that's a great call. Sophie, you mentioned in the pre-talk, so you have to re-mention it. I want to give a very specific example of something like learning from like this works for me kind of thing. We talked about kind of intensity in hard sessions, summer versus fall, and like you experience what you need to kind of get ready and what was good enough or hard enough for kind of establishing the base you wanted. That's just a very specific example, but I wanted to give people not just too big a horizon all the time. Can you tell us about your kind of learning how you should do that to perform at the right time?
Yeah, I think for me, I found out that doing a lot of, I guess it depends where you're from. We have like level 1 is easy, level 4, 5 race pace, level 3 is threshold. And if I'm doing a lot of level 4, level 5 training, I think it can get me into kind of race specific shape very quickly. But if I do too much of it, it can also make me tired. And so I've found that threshold training is kind of the nice balance for me. And I basically am doing threshold intervals through the whole summer with the occasional time trial or test mixed in. But I found that gives me a really good base to build on. And then when the late summer, fall comes around, I can start doing some more level 4, level 5 training, and that will get me into more race specific shape. But there's really no need for me to be doing a lot of that earlier in the summer, because if I do, I think I risk getting in race shape very early, and then there's not really anywhere to go from there. And I think that's probably very different for different athletes, but that's something I've played with a little, and I've found that works well for me. And from like a mental aspect, it's also kind of nice for me, because maybe similar to Eirik, like it's hard for me to feel like I'm always focusing on skiing and always thinking about racing. And threshold workouts are workouts that generally feel really good and maybe don't require as much mental energy. And it's nice for me to kind of save that for the fall, when I feel like I'm trying to fine tune and get ready for race season, and use the summer like I'm more building a base.
I think that's actually a perfect segue over to like a little bit of a shift of topic here. Not really topic, it's still ownership, but we're going to focus a bit more on this on the mental side that you started to kind of mention there, Sophie, and what I also call like life balance. Everything from education to family and friends, and the whole setup that you need, which Eirik also touched upon to a certain degree. Ragnhild, in our pre-talk, we talked about like starting really big, but like you worked with some specialists in this area, and like where have you guys started with working with someone that you kind of enjoyed and learned something from? How big did you guys start on that kind of approach to what you need?
Yeah, we had or we have a mental performance coach who we can choose to work with or not. It's optional. And one day a few years ago, she started off like, what are your values in life, and who are you as a person, and not only as a skier. And I think that was very interesting, because in sports world we always like, we are so detail oriented, and coaches are focusing on our technique and arms and legs and like small things, and she saw more of the bigger picture. And of course we all have like friends, family, home, and other things than skiing, but part of the project is getting to know yourself as both a skier and also a person. So you need to know what you need in life to, I think, make the project work over time. So for me, it's like I learned that I like to work hard, and I also like the balance in traveling with a team, and then go home and have some time off and for myself. And also, like, it's as simple as bringing a book to camp and have some time to read on my own. So she made me like, I don't know, if it wasn't for her, maybe I wouldn't be skiing for such a long time, because it's about yeah, making the project work for you over time, I think.
Devon, can you maybe continue on here in terms of like what kind of life balance have you experienced being friends, family, liking to kind of be in the game in the bubble all the time, because we're very different here. So just like, it's using you as an example here, how did you kind of discover the balance piece that you needed to perform optimally?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting discussion. I mean, Eirik and I are friends outside of the Zoom call too, and like we've had discussions like this a ton when we're together, because I think it is fascinating. And Sophie alluded to that as well, about the spring. And like for me, the mountains has been just like such a big part of my life, and it's like I'm kind of like a fish out of water if I'm not around the mountains for long periods of time. And the funny thing is like, as a younger athlete, like here's some mistakes I made, but I had the best time doing it. A really good buddy of mine, Phil Widmer, who maybe some of the people on the call will know, him and I were roommates and loved rock climbing. And it got to the point where like there was one specific training season that we would train twice a day, blow in, make like Tex-Mex tacos as fast as we possibly could, put them in Tupperware boxes, rip out to the crag. We lived in Canmore, so it wasn't that long, but still, climb till it got dark, hadn't eaten anything, eat in the truck on the way back to our house, collapse into bed, repeat. And in some ways, like I had a coach, and specifically when he started to figure out this was what was happening, would get quite tired, of course, after doing this for 6 weeks or so. And it's just like, you need to like drop this. And I was just so against it, because it's like, I need that. Like, I just needed that. I needed climbing in that moment I felt like stressed about skiing or whatever like that. But like a sport like climbing for me was just so amazing, because everything drops away when you're climbing. I sucked at climbing, and I still do. But when I am climbing, like, it's just right here in front of me. It's like a Zen meditation in a way. And that balance, that one small anecdote, is a balance that I think is super important for all performers in anything. If you're trying to perform in an academic field, if you're trying to perform in sport, even in some ways, like to be a good family person as well, it is important to have like some outlets. You don't want to go overboard with it. That's for sure. Like anything in life, if you start going climbing like I did that summer, I went overboard and got quite tired, and I had to find a balance. But throughout my career, like Sophie would say, like, you see a lot of people doing crust skiing and that sort of stuff in April, and like smashing Ks and shushin and stuff like that. Like the second the race season was over, the Nordic skis were like like, I love Nordic skiing. I go Nordic skiing a lot still. I don't race anymore. I love the sport. But the second the race season was over, was like, dust off the backcountry skis, grab the crampons, like, it's game time. And then it would be like alpine starts not every day, but like multiple times a week, and just being out in the mountains, no heart rate monitor, no rules, nothing, make a sandwich and go. And I just needed that. And it took a long time for me. I had a few years in my career where I got a little too serious, and I didn't give myself those outlets as much to go out and have an adventure. And I mean, Sophie's husband is a great example of that, and it works for him. And he's the same. It's like, you need to have adventures, even though if it sounds silly. Like, if it's planned well and you have good communication with your coach, I think it's really important to have those times planned. If you wanted to go out into the mountains, like, you know, sometimes would go climbing, and it'd be like, I'd be out for 14 hours. That's not the best in August, you know, let's be honest, if you're smashing a bunch of intervals and strength and stuff like that. But I really felt as though I needed that mentally. And I would always come back feeling so much better and so much more grounded and ready to do the work. And Eirik and I were talking about this actually a few weeks ago in Norway, there's a lot of people that will go hunting in the fall, and they'll just go for a week hunting in the fall. Like, it's almost like, are you serious? Like, the race season's coming up. Bitestolen for the Norwegian team is so important, because if you're not on the national team, and even if you are, you want to secure your World Cup starts early, and then you're just going to go hunting, like walking through like swamps and stuff, like with your dog hunting birds. But I think we have this idea that training has to be like in this box, and that is good training. If you're walking around in the woods or through marshes with your dog shooting some partridge, you're outside 10 hours a day, like walking around, and you're getting such a better appreciation for, it's a mental recharge, right? And it is training in a way. It's just something different. If you did that all year long, you'll be a great hunter. You probably won't be a great skier, but you have to be able to fit those in. Eirik, maybe you could like expand on that, since we just had this conversation like not that long ago.
Yeah, I totally agree, 100%. For me, last couple of years, it's been hockey. I really enjoy it, and my coach hates me for it. But I've been playing ice hockey a little too much, little overboard. But the pre-season of August to December, I've been playing once a week, and for me, it gives me so much energy, and when I look at my heart rate and evaluating the session afterwards, it's crazy. It's and it doesn't feel like training, and I can do a hard session afterwards as well, and it's something that I need to do. I figured out, and it's like you say, it's really important to have those small things for yourself, maybe, and
and I think that is something that gets lost, right? Like, we did talk about this, so just repeating our conversation, but like, I think athletes get lost in that, to forget what it is. And it can be so many different things. It could be ice hockey. For me, it was like being in the mountains, climbing or ski touring or something like that. That just on paper, it's like, okay, you're playing ice hockey, like you're skating hard, people can hit you, there's pucks, like you're Norwegian, so you're not that good. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, but like there's an injury potential there.
That's true.
No, but there's like an injury potential. So like coaches can be a bit stressed, or other people, like family members, me, same thing, like any sort of mountain activity you do, especially when you're a Nordic skier. Like, I am not a mountain guide. I'm a Nordic skier that is a mountain enthusiast. And there's a whole bunch of risks that could come into that, right? If you have a 14-hour day on some cliff or something, you can get off route or pull rocks out or injure yourself. But like the energy, same as you, I had that same feeling. Like, I just get so much energy from that. And it's about finding those things within your life. And then if you have that good communication, that good relationship with your coach, they'll understand that. I mean, everybody in the world understands that. At least that's my perspective. Like, I think they should understand it. Anybody with some self-awareness will understand that it's so important to find elements that unplug. Like Ragnhild, you were saying, like having time in a training camp or when you're traveling a lot, just have like a book that you like to like, that you take with you, that you really like reading. And you can just be like, kind of get away from everything. You don't have to gossip or talk shit or whatever. Like, you can just like take some time and read a book. So you can have like micro breaks, all not breaks, but like just kind of like separate yourself and get some perspective. And I think that idea of perspective is like super important. I don't know, like Sophie, if you like what some strategies like, I mean, cause like Simi, cause we talk about that a lot, like when we were together, but like, what is it for you? Like, what have you found in your career that like in certain parts of the year that you just like, okay, I need some me time to mentally like recharge? And like Eirik was saying, you get so much energy from that recharge. Do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think similar to you, in the spring, we usually don't really like to touch our Nordic skis. And I remember at one point this spring looking at Simi, and I was like, honestly, right now, like the thought of going for an hour run and going to the gym is more exhausting to me than going for a 6-hour backcountry ski.
Oh yeah.
Which doesn't really make much sense, but I think it means like, okay, I still need more of a mental break. And this spring was a little weird with all of the events going on and the season cut short, but I kind of told myself, I'm always staying active. I think I have this base fitness, but I'm going to wait until I'm excited to do workouts to do them, because then I know that I'm mentally ready and I can be all in when I'm there. And it took a little longer than maybe it usually does because it was a kind of a weird year, but now I'm back with the team and doing regular workouts, and I'm excited to be there, and I feel like I can show up and do it. Whereas if I had started maybe 2 weeks too early, I could have gotten really burnt out. And I think one other example is, I think it's important to find your balance and what mentally recharges you, but it's also important to take your, emotional and mental state into consideration when you're planning your training. And like last fall, Simi and I got married, and I said to Matt, like, I don't want a training plan this week. Like, I'm sure I'm going to do something active most days, but like right now, like life is more important than skiing. What's going to make me a fast skier is if I can spend time with my friends and family this week. And I'm sure I'll still go for a run with my brother and hikes with my cousins, but like I'm going to be a faster skier if I can be happy after this week and spend it exactly how I want to. And so I think it's really important, whether it's a positive life event or a negative life event, you have to be taking your emotional and mental state into consideration. Because if you're burning the candle at both ends, I think you just become a very emotionally and physically tired skier.
Totally. And I think like this idea, well, you just said it, but like energy management is something that a lot of skiers like just can't like really grasp, because you want to control stuff, right? You want to control like your training or your strength training, or like even like chucking in ice hockey or climbing or whatever, and you're like, yeah, it's giving me mental energy. It's like, but you have a finite amount of energy, and I totally agree with you, like emotionally, and also too, like that, how does that change? I don't know if Ragnhild, you have any examples of that, but like how does that change within a year? Like I would find like in the fall, right, when you've been training like big months, especially like the later part of my career or whatever, if you're training over 900 hours a year, I mean, that's nothing compared to like Teresa, I know, but like for me, that was a lot. And like you get to like October and be like, oh man, like I probably made some mistakes in those moments, because like emotionally I'm just like raw, right? Like I have burnt the candle a little too much at both ends, and I didn't have the wherewithal and the confidence to be like, okay, whoa, like I'm just going to take a bit of time here. And I don't know, have you ever had those experiences, Ragnhild?
Yes, I think so. And I think over the years as a senior, I've been better at like not burning everything, using all the energy in May and June, and then coming to the fall and be both mentally and physically tired. So I think you have to know yourself good enough to like put in the climbing or the reading or the me time in any way during summer, and yeah, to get some mental rest and be ready for the season. And I think another point is that you see during the winter, like race season, that people who do all the races, they can also be mentally tired. Like it's demanding to focus on the races as well. It's not if you are physically fit and you stand on the start line, but you don't have your head in the right place because some want to be with their family at home and they have been doing 30 races and 31 is not so exciting, then it's very stupid if the 31st race is the most important. So need to plan that in a way also. We are only humans, so we need time off as well.
We're gonna not wrap it up exactly at 60 minutes because I have a few questions I want to ask from the crowd here, but we'll ask. I have about one question more for each of you guys, and let's try to do that in like 10 minutes ish, just to give an idea here, and then we're gonna wrap it up. Eirik, we start with you. What is the Norwegian approach on strength training? Is it mostly core and body weight based? How important do you think strength training is for cross-country skiers?
It's changed during my career what I focus on, but I feel like you need to have some maximum strength up until a level, and then you don't need that maximum power more than that, if you understand what I mean. And the core strength is my opinion is the most essential. My last 3 years we did core every day, starting the day with core to be better in your technique and the awareness of your how your hips and your positioning, and be able to handle your upper body strength, so the general strength training, like different stability exercises and simulation, like stability is for me the most important, and maximum power is of course important too, but I had like once a week.
Perfect answer.
I don't know about Sophie. What do you do?
Strength. I think in general, well, we've shifted a little further away from doing more like Olympic lifting, kind of your typical gym strength. But for me, having that base is pretty important, because I feel like when I don't have that natural base strength, I can just feel it in my skiing. But I think for us, core and stability are also a big focus, but depending on the person, it can vary. And for me personally, I still do a fair amount of like your typical lifting, because I feel stronger when I have that sort of upper body mass in my sprinting. But I think it varies depending who you are on the team. And then we work in a fair amount of plyos, but that also varies. For someone like me, I tend to naturally be a pretty springy, like fast twitch person. So I don't do a ton of jumps, but if that's a big goal of someone's to improve that, then maybe they're doing more plyometrics. So I think there's a range, but in general, I would also say core is a big focus. But we're getting in the gym twice a week and then maybe doing one additional core workout on top of that.
Ragnhild, a question for you. In designing your programs, who are the coaches you work with, and how do you bring in group sessions into your plan and your, like, this is what I want to do? How do you kind of cooperate, kind of get group sessions to fit into that? So coaches and group sessions.
I have a Dropbox file where I plan my month with the training sessions. Like, I can write down the amount of training each week, and then the high intensity sessions and what I plan to do. And then my coaches can, they usually go in and see my plan and can edit or call me, or yeah, but it's usually me writing in that file, so they are just calling if something looks bad, or we can sit on a training camp and discuss and plan together in the file also for the next weeks.
Sophie, oh, I lost a question here, but I think I remember it. The question was something in the area of like, when did you start kind of training towards becoming the best skier possible versus just like being a part of things? Like, when did it get a bit more serious for you? And did you ever get kind of, that's why I kind of targeted you or Devon, because this wouldn't apply in Norway, but they were asking about, did anyone ever kind of tease you in school for choosing cross-country skiing because it was not like a real sport? I don't think Ragnhild and Eirik can relate to that, so I'll kind of targeted you. So when did the sport kind of become a bit more serious for you, and this teasing / real sport, maybe social pressure, have you experienced that?
Yeah, probably a little later than most. Well, I went to a ski academy for high school, so I was pretty serious about skiing then, but I played soccer. I think soccer was my favorite sport until I was 16 or 17, and then maybe skiing tied it about then. But then after I graduated high school, I decided to go to college. I felt at that point I wasn't ready to commit to skiing full time. That was when I was about 18, and it was important for me to get an education and also have that kind of life balance. And then when I graduated college, which I guess I would have been about 21 or 22, I still wasn't sure going into my senior year if I wanted to ski full time. I kept going back and forth about pursuing skiing or being a normal person. And I decided to give skiing a go. I'm glad I did. And so I guess really after college was when I committed to it. And I decided if I was going to do skiing full time, I would see what I could do with it. And I skied my first World Cup in Quebec City that fall. It would have been 2012. And then I was named to the national team in spring of 2013. So yeah, I think after, I was serious about skiing, but I was also balancing a lot of other things until I graduated college. And that's kind of when I decided to pursue it full time. And as far as being made fun, I don't really remember being made fun of for being a skier, but it is just, I mean, not everyone knows what skiing is in the US. So maybe you just have some more explaining to do when you say you're a cross-country skier. I don't know. I think people are generally impressed when they watch it or they know what the training consists of. I don't think we were really being made fun of, but it's definitely not the most popular sport. And yeah, not everyone knows what it is.
We're going to have the last question and we're going to wrap this up. It's for you, Devon. Could Devon give examples of the new or different ways he adapted into his training to stress his body later in his career? Referring to what you kind of talked about earlier, Devon, in terms of like you need to change, even if it's working almost, to kind of keep giving a new stimuli that you can adapt to. Do you have some examples of things you kind of brought to the table late in your career?
Yeah, I mean, that adaptation process was, that's what kept me in the sport for as long as I did. I thought it was so fun. But like some major ones, I guess, would be like, another roommate of mine was Chris Jeffries. He's a coach in Canada now, with a training center group based out of Calgary. And he taught me so much, because early in my career, I would just get rocked. Like I was like a border collie or whatever, like just run after those sheep like all day long. And then the next day, like do it, but I'd just be like a little tired, but I'd still try. And that's, I got a lot of improvement that way. I really did. But I also had like pretty big like swings. So when I was tired, I was like really dead, because if you're climbing every day and then just like chasing after everybody every day, and you just get tired. And he really taught me a lot actually about like learning to manage my energy and manage my body. And so what did that look like? I would say in those early years, I trained like a lot of hours and just a lot of everything. And I'm climbing a lot, like just like living life, like full gas. And Chris really helped me like kind of learn my body in that way. So let's say I was training like 800 hours or so, or just over, as in my early 20s. And actually when Justin Wadsworth came into the team in 2011, I had like the two best years of my career for sure were 2011 and 2012. And Justin really like emphasized a lot, like what Sophie was saying, actually, like just that emphasis on quality. And the year that I was second in the overall World Cup, I trained 775 hours, like, which maybe sounds strange, but we just had such an emphasis on quality, which was such an adaptive difference from like just smashing and chasing after the best on my team or every single session, which is what I used to do because I'm just stoked and wanted to do it. And so that was a big adaptation. And then like without getting too much, like way too deep into the weeds, but there's just been like, I've adapted a lot, especially with over distance training, which like OD training in the US, or just like long sessions. And an example of that would be like one thing we built up to this at one point, we would do 3 days, like here's what a week would be in a camp, and we'd repeat it 3 times, and you'd have 3 days at altitude of 6-hour sessions. So you do like a 6-hour OD session. The next day you'd wake up, you do a 6-hour OD session. The next day you'd wake up, you do a 6-hour OD session. Then you'd have an easy day. Then you do intervals and strength. Then you'd have like a chill day or rest day. And then you just repeat that cycle. So that was like a huge adaptation for me, because I had never trained like that before in my life. It was like crazy hard. But I did get like a real benefit from that coming into that next season. But then I also knew how close I flew to the sun doing something like that. And I knew like, where do you go from there? You're not going to do like 7 hours. I mean, it's just like, it's not going to happen. And I felt that it was just like too much. It was like, was a bit too hard. We tried to, like, it was just too much. And then we actually scaled it down, and I got an even better adaptation. So like you're just constantly trying to like adapt with your training. And I wasn't afraid to change things, even if they were working. That, like, I mean, I was not, Eirik is like a super, not to be too like cheerlead for him, because he doesn't need that. But like, I've always respected an athlete like Eirik, especially, or like Alex, for example, who have like, just like this, like serious confidence, like just like total confidence. Like that wasn't me. Like I wish it could have been, but I never kind of figured that part out. But what I did have the confidence to do would know that like, even if something's working, it wasn't a Bible, right? Like it wasn't like, okay, oh, I got to grip onto this, and this is where, like, this is all I can do. I was okay to like, no, think critically of what I was doing, and then adapt and see where it led me. And I'm happy with how it led me throughout my career, actually. So I don't know if that answers that question.
Yeah, no, I think you did it perfectly. And even to think that's kind of going through with everyone here is, and it's a challenge both to the athletes and coaches, is that listening and kind of wrapping this up, is that you're kind of supposed to fail a little bit a few times. You're supposed to maybe blow up on the interval because you want to kind of chase a sheep, as Devon said, and you kind of, okay, what happened today kind of thing. You open too hard, let's try to adapt next time. And you're supposed to do a little bit. So I'm not talking about overtraining over 6 months. I'm talking about like testing things out, being a bit excited, being a bit too much, too little, too hard, too easy. You can't control your athletes from a coach perspective into like, give them a framework, and within that framework, they need to kind of fail and try and figure it out themselves a little bit. And of course, help them identify when it's working, when it's not working. But just putting a perfect path is not going to be perfect. because it doesn't really exist. So this Bible example that Devon is talking about, first of all, doesn't exist. And even if it did, you kind of have to write it yourself a little bit. I really think that's kind of what's going through as a pattern here, is everyone kind of talking about like how they discovered how it worked, basically by a little bit of failure in there, or at least like failure in a very micro situation, which I think is maybe a good take back here. Let your athletes discover a little bit of things. And like athletes, you're supposed to kind of test things out a little bit, but obviously listen to the expertise around you. So just want to say a big thank you to all four of you for kind of being a part of this today. I think everyone could get something out of this, and I hope people, when we put this on YouTube, can even rewatch this and maybe listen a few extra times and take it in extra. Back to you, Stephen, or you can wrap it up.
Oh, you've done great. You know what? I can't express enough gratitude and appreciation for taking the time and having the candor to talk about things. They're quite personal when it comes down to it. You know, we expose ourselves, and I think there's a great amount of wisdom that we draw from these stories and these experiences. So thank you so much to everyone and your willingness to give this today. And maybe at some point we can join again for a follow-up. So we're going to be ending it here. As I said, this is the last one in our series for June. We will be posting again probably after the summer. People are away right now. We're rushing around, not capable for attending. We hope this was really beneficial. I've seen so many comments coming up today. There's a great appreciation for all of you. And I just want to echo that for everyone who was here. So thanks, everyone. And we will wish you all the best. Of course, wishing the season, but you know, it's so much more than that, as you've unveiled. So thanks so much, and be well.
Thank you, guys.